Good morning, everyone. So, my name is Dante. This is my very first podcast. um, so, I think for the most part, I'll be trying to get used to talking to myself. I am 37 years old. I have 5 kids. I'm from Chicago, but I live in Minnesota, Chaska, Minnesota. One thing that's really close to me is being positive. It means a lot to me. So I try to spread that amongst people that I know or people that I engage with in a community or wherever I go. It's enough negativity in the world that we don't need anymore. So I focus on being positive. And I grew up in Chicago, so that's something that wasn't always easy for me to do, but I've worked hard at it year after year. I always wanted to be a better person, and I focus on that every day. How can I be better today? And how can I be a better me tomorrow than I was the day before? So I know for a lot of people, it's not that easy to be just positive all the time. So I'm one of those people where the glass is always half full. I believe there's, in any bad situation, there's something good in it, but it's up to us to locate it, find it, and pull it out. Even with like negative thoughts, I work really hard on being able to counteract that with a positive thought so that my brain doesn't dwell on it. The reason I work so hard at that is because at 14, I went through a pretty good depression, or a pretty bad depression. And, when you go through a depression, it's hard to have those positive thoughts. And that's why I work so hard at it, because I don't want my mind to go back to a place where it is negative. And, I don't want anybody else to go through that. So if I can help anybody with their situation from experience of my life, I'm always more than willing to help. And I think that's something that we lack in this world today is people willing to reach out, or people that actually show that they care. And compassion. Compassion is huge. I was always raised to have compassion for the person that's standing right next to me, no matter who it is. And, I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I think if we can spread that compassion, the positivity, we'll have an actual shot at changing the way that the world is. When I do go back home to visit, like Chicago, it's sad to see what the city is. And it's always been rough. Growing up in Chicago is always rough. You see things you shouldn't have to as a kid. You go through things you shouldn't have to as a kid. But when you have those experiences, it's up to us to make those experiences better in the long run. It's up to us to have those experiences help us be better people. And that's what I use. I don't have a problem with telling anybody my story or what I've been through. And growing up in Chicago, they tell you, it's not okay to be vulnerable. It's not okay to show that other side. But that's what makes us human. As long as you know everything about you, there's nothing no one can use against you that you already know about yourself. No matter who they tell, no matter how they try to spin it. You know you better than anybody. You know your fears. You know the things that you don't like about yourself. You know, and that's part of life. But we use those things to help us get better. And then when we have people that we're close to, we use those situations to give advice from a place of experience. You know, I believe that when you give an advice and you can't speak from a place of experience, it makes that advice that much more important because you can relate to that person. And I believe people can hear that and understand it when you're talking. You know, I know people don't like to get advice from people that may have never been through a situation that you may be going through. You know, I feel it's hard to give advice from somewhere that you haven't experienced. I mean, you can do your best and, you know, try to work with them through it. But I think when you have that experience, it makes it that much more important or meaningful, so to speak. There's not a lot in my life that I haven't been through. So I've seen almost everything, bad, good. With depression, I've seen how low life can get you, you know, but I've also been extremely happy. And I use that to allow me to help others with their depression and things that they may go through in their life, especially when I can relate to it. I'll have a conversation with anyone. And another thing, on July 18th, I was at work and fell off a telephone pole and broke my wrist. Fell about 35 feet. Had surgery that day. I have a plate in my wrist with screws and pins. So from that fall, I also developed PTSD. And this has been one of the most difficult things I've had to go through. And I think it's because I don't understand it all the way. You know, I know the symptoms of it and things like that, but, you know, it was nights when I couldn't formulate a positive thought to save my life. And I'm a really positive person. So that was a big thing for me. And then I started to have nightmares. I still have trouble sleeping. Well, I still have the nightmares, but I call them dreams now. They don't affect me like they once did. And recently, I started to have anxiety attacks. So the anxiety attacks are kind of scary, actually, because I'm usually relaxed and not doing much of nothing when I had them. And I think I've had like maybe 3 or 4 in the last 2 weeks. But I do see a psychiatrist to help me with that, and that has been a tremendous help. So one thing, if anybody listen to this, I want you to know that it's always okay to get help. It's always okay to get help. Whether it's from somebody you trust that's close to you, or if you need professional help, there's nothing wrong with it. The problem is when you don't get the help. You know, I help a few of my friends with their depression, and I have a buddy that has PTSD and depression, and I help him as well, but I couldn't speak to the PTSD from a personal perspective or a place from experience until now. And, you know, that friend has told me that I've probably saved his life on a few occasions. You know, I'm always available to everyone. And that's been my gift and my curse. Because being there for everyone, you know, I didn't take care of myself the way that I should, like mentally. So one of the things that I do now is take that time out for myself to help myself try to understand what I'm going through, clear my thoughts, just get me together. And the better we are for ourselves, which will always be the most important, the better we are for others. I've always said that I wanted to be a better person so I can help people with their experiences, or I wanted to be a better person for my kids. But what I failed to realize was that if I couldn't be a better person for me, I couldn't be a better person for anybody else. So that's something that I work on every day. I try to figure out a way to make me better than yesterday, even if it's a thought process or if it's something that I'm not used to doing. I want to be better, and I focus on that. And I teach my kids that as well, because I want them to be much better than I was. They're growing up in Chaska, Minnesota, and they don't have to see the things that I've seen in Chicago. They don't have to go through the things that I went through in Chicago because they're not exposed to it. I wanted them away from Chicago as quick as I can get them away from them. My first naked lady was a dead woman when I was 12 years old. We were playing softball and, in gym. We was playing softball outside. And the softball went into the bushes, and a classmate noticed the dead body first. And you see a dead body. Kids in Chicago, we go look at it. Not the brightest idea, but we went and saw it, and that was the first time I saw a naked woman. A few other things. So when I was 12 years old, I got shot in the side with a .22. I wasn't doing anything I wasn't supposed to be doing. I was standing in front of my grandmother's candy store. And I guess I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Also at 12, summertime, I saw two guys walk up to a porch. And I asked this kid, where did he live in Chicago? So he told me, I live here, but I'm going to school in the suburbs. I'm just out here to visit for the weekend. So the two guys walked back to the car, got a gun, came back in, shot the guy in his head in front of his mother. I can still hear that lady's scream. Oh, I don't even know if it was a scream, but I can still hear that to this day. And it's still just as bad as the day I heard it. Because no mother should ever have to go through that. And I remember reading the paper the next day. Well, my grandmother was reading the paper. And she was telling us that was a case of mistaken identity. And the scary thing about that was I had an uncle who used to get in a lot of fights in that neighborhood we lived in. And my grandmother had him go live with one of my aunts so he could finish school out there. And, that the situation just hit too close to home. And it also showed us that you never know what could happen. This kid had absolutely nothing going on besides visiting his mother. And he loses his life. Sadly, in Chicago, that's something that people get too familiar with. And I think that's one of the things that just bothers me the most. Because I would like to take my kids around to neighborhoods that I grew up in and show them the schools that I went to in Chicago. And the neighborhoods just aren't safe to be just riding around. In Chicago, you could be a Lyft or an Uber driver and get killed. And You know, I just don't want to put my kids in that type of situation. Now, I wasn't the perfect kid growing up. You know, I was a knucklehead at times. My dad was in and out of jail, so I was mainly raised by my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt. But they did a really good job. I don't have a police record. You know, I take care of my kids. Well, I'm not working now, but once I'm okay to go back to work, I'll be back to work. Hopefully that's November. But they wouldn't let us be products of our environment. Even though at times we tried. But they would not let us. You know, they stayed on us. They made sure we stayed in school, sports. You know, they was tough on us. And there was a lot of boys. But they did a really good job raising us. None of us have criminal records. Well, a couple of us do. But for the most part, we don't have criminal records. We're not in the streets. We're not carrying guns. And we're not living that life that Chicago told us we should live. You know, we strive to do better and show our kids better and be better. So far, we're doing a pretty good job. It's always nice when you can go to Chicago and see everybody from your family. You know, it's a lot of people that I grew up that don't have that opportunity because they've lost loved ones. And it's a sad place to be. You know, we live in a world full of hatred, racism, and nobody hurt black people more than black people. It'd be nice if we could figure out a way to get our communities back. You know, keep it safe where kids that's going to school or coming home from school don't have to worry about gunfire, don't have to worry about being an innocent bystander. You know, kids have enough to worry about with just going to school. It's so hard to be a kid. But it should be a safe place for them. You know, they should be able to go outside and play. And that's not how most people grow up in Chicago now. Because there's so much going on that people don't want their kids outside because they don't have to be involved with anything to get hit by a bullet. And it'd be nice if some of these people that was hanging out in these streets that have kids will want to see their kids in a better place. You know, I think if most people thought about the kids they were raising, that it would help them change their mind frame. You know, once you have kids and you care about being a good parent, you start to change things that you do because you don't want to be a bad model for how your kids grow up. You know, if you a parent that fuss a lot or yelling all the time or constantly getting in fights, it's like you got to stop and think like this. This is what you are teaching them. You know, so it's really important as parents to be a parent for one and not a friend. And then be that person that they can look up to. You know, my kids know I had a bad temper. They knew about my childhood and they know everything about me. But they also see the man that I am today. And that means a lot to me, especially when they can acknowledge it on their own. I have a 21-year-old son, a 18-year-old son, 15-year-old twin girls, and a 9-year-old daughter. My two oldest boys are not biologically mine, but I've been taking care of both of them since they were pretty young. I would have had my own biological son, but he was stillborn, and he would have been 19 this year, October 6th. So that's kind of a rundown of who I am, and I know it's like all over the place, but I think it's a good start. Out here in Chaska, last year my kids were targeted with racism, and as a parent, you get pretty upset. So we're pretty upset with the school board and the principals for not acting on the things that was going on. And when you see a problem, and I think more of us need to do this, when you see a problem, you don't just let it be a problem. You find a solution to that problem. Because if you don't find that solution, you'll pretty much become part of that problem. And I think that was something that I wasn't seeing at first. But now I work with the school board. I work with the high school out here. I actually have a parent advisory council meeting at the high school today at 4. But that's how you make a difference, especially when you have a voice that's not biased. When you can speak about kids and think about all the kids, not just yours, not just your friends or your neighbors, but all the kids at the high school. When our kids are targeted with things, whether it's bullying, racism, or whatever, we forget about like the other kids. And my point of saying that is this. So a couple weeks ago, I reached out to the principal and the school board, and just to ask them to check on the kids that were behind the racism last year, because they're still kids, and we can't forget about them either. We have to make sure that they're doing okay as well. And maybe people see things behind that. It's always good to forgive, not only just because forgiveness is you moving on and taking that power back from over someone that they have over you, but forgiveness is so that you can speak to somebody in an unbiased way and genuine. Somebody may come to you that's done you wrong, but maybe looking to you for like an answer, or maybe they're trying to turn their life around or something. And when we don't have that forgiveness, we tend to shut those people out. Or if we do interact with them, it's a lot of times not genuine because you have things in yourself that you haven't worked out yet. So it was really important to me that I reached out to the principal and the school board to check on those kids. And I didn't want them to tell the families or anything that it was coming from a parent of the kids that was targeted. They didn't have to mention me at all. I just wanted to know that the kids were okay. And they are. They seem to be doing well and ready to move on, and that's good, because when you're trying to move on, you don't need the past coming back to affect you or keep being brought up. So last school year was last school year. This is a new school year, and we want this year and every year forward to be better. Not just for the students, but for the teachers and the staff of the community, or the schools in the community, because if they're okay, they're better equipped to efficiently teach the kids. And one thing that I do know is, if we don't start with the kids that are under us, we'll never get like the country under control. We'll never have people seeing eye to eye. This country is so separated by politics. It's ridiculous. It's too many like rigid views or beliefs to the point where a lot of people don't have an open mind about listening to the other side. Everybody wants to talk. Nobody wants to listen. And that's not how life should be. That's not how your train of thought should be. I don't associate with myself being Democrat or Republican because I don't want to see it this way and not being able to see it the other way. And I just want to be right there and see everything and, not judge anyone for their beliefs or how they feel or who they support. That doesn't matter to me. The only thing that matters to me between people is respect, compassion, and integrity. Integrity is such a huge key in life, because integrity means doing good, like even when there's no eyes on you. So if you can be just as good of a person when no one's around as you are when everybody's around, it speaks volumes to you. And that is something that, that I think that I've gotten naturally, because it was never an issue about doing the right thing. And I didn't always do the right thing, but if I didn't, I knew it wasn't. And I've owned up to everything that I've done. I'll never do something and then tell you I didn't do it and I know it wasn't right, because I don't believe anybody else should, and I wouldn't want anybody else to lie to me. I don't believe in treating people how you want to be treated. Because if you understand people, people won't always treat you that way, and you're basically setting yourself up for failure to expect somebody to treat you a certain way. So my thing is to, treat people how I think people should be treated. And it's not up to me to judge anybody by their political views or places they've grown up or anything like that. We all have a story. We all have a past. And the only way to learn about somebody is to have them tell you their story. If people were more willing to engage and communicate, we'll have a better understanding of people all the way around. Unfortunately, there's people that don't see good in other people, or that they don't want to see the good in other people. And it's not up to us to force them to see it that way. That's up to them. But one thing we can't allow ourselves to do when the world is being an asshole to us, we don't want to turn around and be assholes to it. Because it makes you that same person. And you don't need to be that. My positivity is something that I started to develop after my depression. So with my depression, it was pretty bad. It was pretty suicidal. I attempted 5 times, but I'm still here today, so it didn't work. It did piss me off every time it didn't happen, but I'm so glad that it didn't. And I know there was something else that I was meant to do other than to kill myself. So I speak to people about that as well. You know, I appreciate every experience that I've been through, no matter how good, how bad it is. I appreciate everything that I've ever gone through. This PTSD is the biggest blessing that I've ever had in my life because it's helped me to open my eyes and to see things that I was taking for granted that I probably would not have noticed if I didn't go through it. You know, I'm left-handed and I broke my left hand. So for 2.5 months, like, my life was completely different. It was completely different. I had no use of my left hand at all. And even to this day, I can only lift 20 pounds, maybe 2 times. So I'm still working on that. But also falling 30, 35 feet from a pole, you know, I realized that my injury was pretty minor to what could have happened. And, you know, I've always appreciated life, and this injury just made me appreciate life so much more because I didn't have any back injuries or I didn't go unconscious or anything. You know, all I literally had was I broke my wrist, I had the surgery, I had a bruise on my left leg and my right leg, and then I had like a gash on my shin. That's pretty minor when you fall from that distance. And thinking about the things that could have happened, you know, it makes life seem so much more precious to me. Because even though my life did change, it could be so much worse. And I refuse to dwell on how bad it could have been because I think that makes me minimize, you know, what I'm actually going through. You know, but I have to acknowledge that it could have been worse. And then move on from it. Yeah, I'm kind of like all over the place. So, I'll wrap this up for tonight. If you hear this, I thank you. I really do for even just listening. I think it's important for people to get their stories out because we don't know who else is going through those things. We don't know who else can relate to it. A lot of the help that I've gotten has been from me sharing my story and somebody that's been through it or going through it giving me advice from how they deal with certain things. You know, so that's how we get better. You know, we share our stories. And that's how we make other people better. Because a lot of times people don't know that they have people that they can talk to, or they might feel like they're going through things alone. And when they hear your story and it's similar to theirs, you know, I believe it gives them some hope, but also it gives them a resource as well. And that resource will be there for you. You know, so getting your story out, it's important. I think from here on now, I'll start to pick a topic to speak about and focus on that throughout the whole time instead of bouncing from here, bouncing from there. But I do appreciate you if you listen. And if there's any tips or advice you guys have for me, this is my very first one. I will not edit anything. You know, if anyone's listening, I want them to hear if there's any mistakes that I've made or anything that could be done better. You know, I like feedback. As bad as it can be or as rough as it can be, I welcome all feedback. You know, and if there's things you guys think that I've done well for this being my first time. I appreciate that as well. So I'm signing off, and I think I'll give this another shot. Maybe tomorrow night. Well, tonight. It's a whole new day. But, oh, and I'm also goofy. Very goofy. But life is about being happy. You know, we want to focus on the good things and not the bad. But if you guys are getting up for work, I hope you have a really productive day. Hope the weekend comes really fast for you. You know, I wish everybody well. You know, I hope that everybody is in a good place. I pray for literally everyone in my prayers. I'll pray for everyone. And I don't need to know everyone to pray for them, but I will. So, thanks everyone, and I hope you guys found something in here that may be useful. And I'll keep going, and I'll try to do something every day, you know, to keep it fresh, and also so I can get used to it, so I can become familiar with this process and how this works. Yeah, again, my name is Dante, and I thank you all.